You already own the land. Maybe you inherited it, maybe you bought it cash, but when you go to build on it, surprise, the lender just shuts it all down. And this is a story that's happening more and more now. And it's the one you don't know about until it's too late. So, how do you actually use your land as leverage and not a liability? At this point, owning that land feels like you've already won. You don't have to worry about bidding wars. You don't have to worry about looking for the land. You just own space and a ton of possibilities. But then that dream starts to collide with reality a little bit. When you go into the bank, you're excited about building, you're excited about getting that construction loan, and they just slam the door in your face. But why is this happening more now? That land you bought isn't exactly the shortcut that you thought it was going to be unless you know how to actually use it. Let's make sure that doesn't happen to you. Let's dig in. The first part here is, what does that land equity actually mean to you? How does it really work? When you already own the land, most lenders will count that as a down payment, but this is the actual truth behind it. First of all, and this is the good part, it's not actually what you paid or what somebody paid for it way back when. It's what it's worth today. Now, if you bought it recently and it declined in value, okay, that could be a bad thing. But a lot of times here, people have owned the land for a while. And so as it has gotten more valuable over time, you're going to be able to use that as a down payment. Now, typically, and this varies from bank to bank, but you're typically going to have about 20% down of the total land and build cost. So if you spend $100,000 on land and you're going to spend $500,000 on a build, you're going to have about $120,000 down to get that going. Now, right now, some banks are requiring 25 and even 30% down, but we'll use 20% because it's an easy number. The key on that is if you don't have any utilities in place, if it doesn't have electric or any type of water availability for wastewater, stuff like that, it may end up appraising a little lower than you think. So go back to that same scenario that we were just talking about. If you've got an all-in cost of $600,000 and the land appraises at $100,000, you're going to be $20,000 short. You're still going to have to bring cash to the table. If it appraises for 120 or higher in a 20% down scenario, you're good. But again, talk to those local banks and find out, are they going to require 20% down or is it 25 or 30? Again, if they require 30% down and it's a 600,000 build and your land appraises for 120, you're going to be 60,000 short on that. You're going to have to bring that in cash. Understand this up front. And even if you can do it before you buy the land, because a lot of times people think that they're going to buy the land in cash and then it's going to count towards their down payment, which it will again. But if it's not as valuable as your 20% down or 25 or 30% of your build, you could still have to bring additional cash. And if you don't have that, well, it might be a little bit tough and it may push that build timeline out a little. Second part of this is make sure you get the right loan program from your lender. And you may have to talk to several lenders in the area just to make sure you're getting the right product. Again, when you're doing a construction loan or even a land loan, you're not going to be going to the normal Wells Fargo, Citibank, CITI, the big bank. You're not going to be going to Rocket Mortgage to get a construction loan. You're going to be going to, your local lender, CITY Bank, maybe a credit union in the area, Pioneers, a local one in here in Texas. You're going to be going to that type of bank to get these construction loans. It's more of a niche product. It's a portfolio product that the bank's not going to sell off, honestly, because they really can't sell it because there's quite a bit of risk involved for the bank. So you're going to have to go to those local resources and talk to them, tell them what you want to do, tell them what you have, and just have those conversations with the lenders. And again, it's always a good idea to talk to more than one just to make sure that you're getting the best deal that you can. And so in terms of those different products, here's the different things that you can ask about. So the first one of these is construction to permanent all in one. It's called a one-time close a lot of time. This is ideal if you are ready to break ground. Okay, you've got your builder, you've got your plans, you've got bids, you're ready to go. And what this product does, a one-time close, is it allows you to sign the paperwork with the bank. And then once that construction is done and the bank signs off and everybody agrees that it's done and it's passed whatever inspections need to be done for the bank to ensure livability, at that point, the bank is automatically going to convert it into that permanent financing, a conventional loan, that 30-year fixed loan or 20-year fixed loan, whatever you do. But the best thing about this, again, is you're only going to have to pay closing costs one time, but you do have to be ready to go and ready to start the project pretty quickly. The biggest thing to remember here here is that most construction loans are going to be a 1-year term loan. So that's why I say that you've got to be ready to go from the beginning. Now, some states, normal construction timeline is going to be 18 months to 2 years, and those construction loans can be for longer periods in those states. But again, here in Texas, typical term for a construction loan is 1 year, and you're going to have carrying costs during that time. And if you have to extend that when you're doing a one-time close at the end of the year, you're not going to be locked into that interest rate that they told you about up front. The bank is going to extend your construction loan, but now they're going to take a second look at what your interest rate was going to be in that permanent financing, and so you could end up losing money that way. So that's why I say it's a good idea to have everything ready to go if you're going to do a one-time close. Another thing to consider on a one-time close is when you get that loan up front, that's what your permanent fixed mortgage is going to be in terms of the interest rate at the time. So if you're in an environment that the interest rates are going down, maybe a one-time close isn't the right thing for you, because at the end of that construction, you may end up with a lower interest rate, potentially a lot lower interest rate than when you go under contract with the bank and get that loan. Now, if you're in an escalating environment, okay, it probably makes more sense and you really want to do a one-time close, because you can basically lock that interest rate in upfront from the beginning when construction starts. And then as long as you get your construction done on time, you're going to have that interest rate that was lower, even though interest rates have gone up during the construction. The next loan product you need to be aware of is what is a lot and construction combo. If you already own the lot, you still need to look into this, because when you take out construction loans, they're going to be paid out in draws. Okay, so the first draw might be your foundation costs. The second draw may pay for framing and dry-in. Okay, but if you get a lot loan in that, the first draw is actually going to pay for your lot, and then you're going to be paying the interest only on that lot. And then your second draw will be the foundation. Okay, now you're paying interest only on the combination of your lot and foundation. But the thing to talk to your lender about is if you paid cash for your lot, and let's say that that 20% is $100,000, but your lot's worth $200,000. Okay, well, you may be able to recoup some of that cash you paid for the lot from the lender to put cash back in your pocket for other upgrades. So make sure to have that conversation with your lender, like, hey, I think my lot is worth this much, and they're going to do an appraisal on it. But tell them, hey, I think my lot is worth this much. If I only need $100,000 and it's worth $200,000, can I take a lot construction loan combo and actually get money back from you to put money back in the bank for other things that I might need to spend it on? Another loan consideration would be a HELOC, home equity line of credit. If you've got other assets, let's say that you've got a home and you need money out of it to build, this is going to be a second home for you, or this is going to be a retirement home and a weekend getaway for the time being. Okay, well, if you've got a personal home that has a lot of equity in it, it may make more sense to take out a HELOC in order to pay for that construction. You would end up paying it in cash, because as you get a HELOC, it's a line of credit, and then the bank, just cuts checks along the way to pay for it. But it may actually be cheaper from an interest rate perspective to get a HELOC than to get a construction loan and then convert that to a permanent loan at the end. So make sure you ask your lenders about HELOCs. They could be a good solution for you. The next loan product, and this is going to be best for non-traditional borrowers, self-employed borrowers, stuff like that. I mentioned those local banks. That portfolio loan, and sometimes it'll be a portfolio loan that they keep in-house, and sometimes they can get it out of house for construction loans. But if they keep it in-house, they're going to be a lot more flexible on the terms. Now, you may not like all the terms, because again, this is a risky loan for most banks. But if the bank is local, they know the product, they know the location, they know what it's worth, they may be willing to keep that thing in-house and be a little bit more flexible with you on terms. So as you're talking to these local banks, find out, hey, is this a portfolio product you're going to keep in-house, or is this something you're going to shop out and try to sell? Some banks will try to sell that, but again, those portfolio products are going to be a little bit more flexible. The next product to ask about, but this is only if you're a licensed contractor, and licensed is vague terms, because in Texas, we don't really even have licensing for contractors anymore. But if you are an active contractor, you're a general contractor, and you can show a history of the houses that you've built recently, the banks may have what's called an owner-builder loan specifically for you. So ask them about it. Again, these are pretty rare, but if you are are a contractor, they may exist for you. And the other thing I want to kind of reiterate here, I talk about it all the time. Regardless of where you are, you're going to have a local team. Okay. And in this video, we're talking about lending. So it's very obvious that you're going to have a local lender, and it's going to be better for you in terms of the deal you get and how much it costs you. You're going to have a local lender wherever you're looking. Now, again, in Texas, I got your local lenders covered. If you need something outside of the state of Texas, let me know. I do know a lot of builders and realtors and lenders, but if I don't know a lender in that area, more than likely I can reach out to a realtor or a builder in that area and find out who their go-to local lender is. So, if you need any connections like that, just let me know. Okay, the third part here is, what do banks actually want to see when they look at the deal? And banks typically don't focus too far, and especially local banks. They don't focus too much on individual parts of the deal. They want to see the whole thing in aggregate. What does the land look like? What does what you want to build on it look like? What does your credit look like? And what's actually there now versus what's going to be there in the future. And then they want to take all of that into account for that final cost of what you're doing versus the final value, that if you had to put it on the open market, what would that final value be? If banks were going to give you a best case scenario, like a checklist, A, B, C, D, all the way down, this is what they want to see. First of all, they want to see architectural plans. They want to see a set of building plans ready to go. They don't want you to walk in with a dream, because they can't put a value on a dream. They want to see, it's going to be this big. It has this much of the square footage is HVAC, what kind of insulation, what kind of roof. Again, they're trying to get an idea of what's going to be there so they can appraise the final value of that thing and make sure that as a bank, they're not lending on something that's not going to be worth the total cost to build it. The second thing they really want to see is permits ready to go. Now, you're going to have a builder in place in order to start filing for permits, but they would rather see you walk in with that architectural plan set and permit saying, hey, the county's already approved this, and I'm approved for septic, I'm approved for a well, the electric company has approved getting power to my place, and the county has signed off, we are ready to go, ready to build. And speaking of that builder, they're going to want to see a licensed builder. They're going to want to see a reputable builder. If there's not a licensing arm in your state, like Texas, they're going to want to know that that builder is familiar with building in that area. Because if, going back to Texas, because that's my experience, if you've got a builder that's building out here in the hill country, they're going to know how to deal with these soils. But if you're bringing in a builder from Houston, they really don't know what they're doing over here, and that's going to make that bank a little bit leery. So you want to find, again, just like you have a local lender and a local realtor, you want a local builder. If you don't know those people, reach out to your agent and your lender and get recommendations and vet those builders and talk to them and ask them all the questions and find out, are they going to be able to build on your timeline? Are they going to be able to build in the price range that you're looking for? But these are things that you want to have that builder in place, and it needs to be somebody local and reputable, so that, again, when you go to the bank to ask them all these questions, you're going to be like, yep, this is the builder that I'm using. And chances are, if that bank does a lot of construction loans locally, they're going to know who that builder is. And that's what they want to see. They want to get the warm fuzzies. They want to know, oh yeah, Bob from Bob's Construction, that's the guy that's going to build the house. Yep, we've done deals with Bob. We know that he's going to do it right. And the next thing that banks would really love to see are all the utilities in place. It makes your lot more valuable. So if you can buy a lot that already has, septic plans or septic in place, has a well on it, has utilities on the lot already, the bank is going to feel a lot better about that. If you don't buy a lot with that, if you've got the cash to do it when you're buying that lot, then go ahead and put that stuff in. And again, it's going to take working with the builder. It's going to take, all that planning up front. But when you bring it to the bank, you're going to be that much further along, and that land is going to be valuable. It's going to appraise for more. So it's not like you're dumping that cash and you're going to lose it. You're going to be able to use that for that down payment. So you're making that land more valuable. And then the last thing that they're really going to want to see, and it's going to be a non-negotiable, is an updated survey. But the good thing is, when you bought that land to begin with, you made sure to get a brand new fresh survey. I talk about it all the time. Do not buy property without a brand new survey. You never know what the other surveyor missed. And if the owner paid for that survey 2 or 3 years ago, the owner, something could have changed. Not that they were being malicious about it, but they could have moved a fence line and they forgot about it or something. So always when you buy land, make sure you get that updated survey. And then when the bank asks for it, you're like, yep, here's a brand new survey, because they are going to ask for it. And a lot of times now on my YouTube, the comments, people are like, oh, well, this can't happen, that can't happen. But, I have read case studies about people who went to build on a piece of property, and there's a road directly to the property, and the lender goes, no, we can't lend on this because there's no legal access to it. Easements come up all the time, and people say, well, it should be illegal to sell without an easement. And, I don't necessarily disagree, but it happens. And there's other people that are like, no, that never happens because you have to be able to have access to your property. Guys, I'm telling you, this is another one of those situations. You better know what's going on in the area that you want to build, because there's some states that don't really care about private property rights, and they will take away land for an easement to grant to somebody else behind them. But there's also other states where if you want that easement, you're going to have to come to an agreement with the owner of that land, and it's going to cost you money out of pocket. And if the owner doesn't want to give it to you, you may end up having to hire attorneys and going to court over it, which is also going to be another big expense. So make sure before you buy the land, again, that you have a legal access point. Yes, is there a possibility that you could get access to landlocked property sometime down the road? Sure, it's possible. But again, how much are you going to have to pay the landowner? How much is it going to cost you to put that easement in? What is it going to cost you in attorney fees? If you pay $50,000 for a piece of property, but it's going to cost you another $20,000 to get access to it, hell, is it worth it at that point? And then this is always a little bit of a pro tip on this. As you're getting your ideas together for your builder and for your lender, and what you want to build, before you go down the road of spending money on architectural plans, and putting in septic and putting in electric and putting in a water well, before you do that, go to your lender and make sure that you're going to be able to qualify for that loan. Make sure that the land is worth what you think it is, and you're not going to have to bring an extra 100,000 cash to the deal when you thought you were only going to have to bring 20. Make sure that the lender is on board with the plan before you go spending more money on architectural plans and all this other stuff. Because look, you might spend $15,000 or $20,000 on architectural plans if it's a big home. And if you can't build, if you're not ready to, or like financially you can't build on there, you can try to sell those architectural plans with that property, but that only is going to bring value to somebody if they're interested in building the same house that you are. So I don't want you to drop, again, another $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 only to find out that you are not loan ready, and it may take you 3 or 4 years to become loan ready, and that doesn't fit into your timeline. So before you start spending additional money beyond that land, and personally, I would rather you get it done before you buy the land, but let's say that you inherited it, okay, talk to your lender first, find out, make sure, yep, I'm good to go for getting this loan, this construction loan, and I'm going to be able to convert it to permanent. And like that whole process is already above board. You're ready to go from that standpoint. Okay, fourth part here. Let's talk about things that I have seen derail construction projects or builds, and stuff like that. First of all, let's talk if you inherited the land. Number one is make sure the land is in your name. Have a title search run to make sure it's in your name and it's not still in an estate's name, or whoever gave it to you, Uncle Bob or your mom and dad. Make sure that that land is in your name, because it's going to have to be in your name in order for you to get any type of loan on that property. So that's first thing. If you inherited it, make sure it's in your name. Second thing, if you inherited it, make sure you have a fresh survey. Spend the money. It could cost you $1,000. It could cost you $10,000. But again, the lender is going to want to see a survey of what they are loaning on, and they're going to make you get one anyway. So you may as well get it up front. You're going to pay for it regardless. Have a fresh survey done. And then again, going back and making sure that you have a clean title on it, and having title run on that property. You're going to want to make sure that there's no old liens. There's no old mechanic liens or anybody else that can lay claim to that property. Now, when you're going through the process with your lender, they're going to make sure, and you're going to have to pay it off regardless. But if you've got a clean title up front and you've already taken care of all of that, then that's going to help expedite the process with the lender. When you get to the lender part and even the builder part, the more of these things you can get taken care of up front, there's going to be a lot less frustration with the lender and with the builder and with the process. If you're having to go back and cure title issues after you've already started talking to the lender, it's going to make things seem like they're just dragging and it's taking forever. You don't want that. You want that process with the lender to be clean, seamless. Again, title's in your name, you've got a clean survey, all old debts are paid off, all liens are taken care of. The lender's going to look at it and go, yep, we need X, Y, and Z from you. We can get this started. That's what you want in this process. Now, let's talk about a little different scenario. Let's say you're like me and you're self-employed or you're retired. The lender's going to want to see different things. If you're self-employed, they're going to want to see 2 years of tax returns. It's unnegotiable. You are going to have to give them 2 years of tax returns. Now, most self-employed people are going to write off as much as they possibly can to limit their tax liability. I do it too. But if you've written everything off and you don't show a profit and you're self-employed, well, then they really can't loan you money because you don't have any income, or your income is very, very small, because that's what you're showing to the federal government to reduce the taxes. I get it. So be aware that one thing you can do, if they tell you, hey, you don't show enough income, you can go back and amend your taxes for the last couple of years, and you can make additional payments to the IRS to show a higher income that would help you qualify for the loan. But just know that you're going to have to show the last 2 years, and if you don't show enough income, you can cure that. Now, if you're retired, you're also going to have to show your retirement income. That may be Social Security, it may be income from 401k dividends and stuff like that, but have all that documentation ready ahead of time so you're not having to call your financial advisor and, oh, I've got to find this document, I got to find this document. Just start working on that ahead of time before you go talk to that lender. Don't be surprised if they ask to see cash reserves. And again, this may be in investment accounts, it may be in a local bank account, stuff like that, but they're going to want to know your financial position overall. Now, if you show a high enough income and they're not worried about cash reserves and things like that because you've got a great income, awesome. But just to be safe, make sure that you've got all the files and printouts ready to go, PDFs at this point, but make sure you've got those PDFs ready to go to give to that lender when they start asking for those reserve positions. And remember, if you go to a national bank to try to get a construction loan, especially as retired or self-employed, most of the times you're going to get a no. And there's not a lot of national banks that will give you construction loans in the first place. But going to those local lenders, that's where the key is. That's where you're going to get that loan done. That's where it's going to be easiest and cheapest for you. And again, if you need lender names in specific areas, reach out to me. I can help with that. Another little bit of a pro tip here. The first time you talk to that lender, ask them this question, and it's going to make sense, because even the local lenders, they all have a little bit different requirements for what they want to see in terms of documentation for you. So ask them, hey, look, the last time that you qualified a self-employed borrower or a retired borrower or even a W-2 borrower, if that's you, and they owned the land, how did you get them to qualify? What documentation did you require? They should be able to give you a pretty concise checklist so that you can prep all that stuff ahead of time. I was just recently listening to a story about Usain Bolt, and they asked him about, if you're not familiar with Usain Bolt, he's a track runner, Olympic athlete, great athlete, fastest man on earth. And they asked him if he was actually coasting, and he laughed about it, and he said, no, I run the hardest 110 meters out of anybody on the planet. Well, the race is only 100 meters long. So what he was saying is that he runs through the finish line. And when you look at this from a land perspective and from building on it, buying that land isn't the finish line. That's like the first 30 meters of a race. And so what you have to plan on, and this is from, making sure that you've got cash reserves and everything else, what you have to plan on is getting through the final bit of construction and then going even further to make sure that you can, monetarily you've got it under control, but also to make sure that from a mental standpoint, you don't get to the finish line and you're completely exhausted and then things aren't finished in the end. When you move into that house, you want to have taken it through that 110 meters. You want to make sure that everything is done, all the T's have been crossed, all the I's have been dotted, and when that house is done, now you're just moving in and enjoying your life.